So welcome everybody. Welcome to our new event, Sharing Alumni Advice Wednesdays. SAA Wednesdays is like we like to say for short. I'm going to actually allow the panelists to introduce themselves so you guys can follow who we have here. So I can start off with Sarah Hickey. You guys can go ahead and introduce yourselves as you please.
Hi everyone, thanks so much for coming. My name is Sarah. I graduated in 2017. I majored in public health, legal studies, and French. I am currently a 2L in law school, so I'm in my second of 3 years. I'm at Boston University, and before going to law school, I worked for 2 years in downtown Boston at a small real estate law firm as a legal assistant.
Awesome. Megan?
Hi everyone, I'm Megan. I graduated in 2019 as an accounting major. I'm now in my second year of law school as well at New England School of Law in Boston, and I work for KPMG in Boston as a tax associate.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Cheryl?
Thank you. I graduated in 1988. And I was a political science major, and now I am self-employed as a family and probate attorney in Burlington, Mass.
Thank you so much. Tom?
Hi, everybody. Nice to get the chance to talk to all of you. Tom Campbell. I graduated from UMass in 1990 as a history major. I went to Northeastern School of Law, graduated there in 1993. Right now, I am at a firm in downtown Boston called D'Ambrosio Brown. It has about 20 lawyers, and I am
Thank you so much. Ashley?
Hi, everybody. My name is Ashley Berger. I graduated from UMass in 2013 with a dual degree in history and legal studies. Similar to Sarah, I took 2 years off before I went to law school. I graduated from Suffolk Law in 2018, and I currently work at a firm in Boston called Boyle Shaughnessy Law as an associate.
Thank you. Gwen?
Hi, thanks for joining us tonight. Gwen Weisberg. I'm a UMass class of 1980, so I think that makes me the most experienced person here on I went to Temple University School of Law in Philadelphia and graduated in '86. I'd taken some time off before I went back. And I am in private practice with a national firm here in town called Donovan Hayden in Boston, and I do construction litigation, and I represent architects and engineers in design defect cases.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And Richard?
Hi, my name is Richard Sugerman. I graduated UMass in 1992 as a political science major, and I went to George Washington University Law School, where I graduated there in 2000. I currently am the Deputy General Counsel at Boston Medical Center Health System, where I oversee the hospital side of our health system. And I get to practice law in really everything from real estate to some litigation, commercial litigation mostly, typical healthcare law, as well as really anything that comes in the door for our organization. So I'm looking forward to speaking with everybody tonight.
Thank you so much. And lastly, and surely not least, but Zach.
And I'll mute myself. Hello, everyone. My name is Zach. I graduated from UMass in 2014 with a degree in political science. And as I like to say, I had a lot of fun at UMass, so I stuck around for another 2 years to get my master's in higher education, which then landed me at Western New England School of Law right down the street in Springfield, Mass. And then I came not too far down to Hartford, where I work for Morrison Mahoney, which is an insurance defense firm. So I do a lot of work with professional individuals that are attorneys or who are horse rider instructors, pilots, architects, things like that, who hire insurance companies to fight off whatever they're being challenged by. So welcome.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much. So clearly, as you guys can obviously hear, we have in very, very I can't even figure out the word, extensive list of awesome alumni that you can honestly get all of your questions answered from any career-wise. As you can obviously see, this is a law-related or law school-related type of conversation. But all these panelists and alumni are obviously reaching and a part of a different career within that aspect. So definitely utilize them in that sort of way as well. But thank you guys for introducing yourself. Again, thank you all for being here. So we're going to start off with COVID related questions. So one big question, as you all can see, that this huge pandemic kind of swept over the entire world and jobs have been lost. Jobs have also been gained, and there's just a whole new normalcy that we kind of have to abide by. So just career related and job related, how has COVID-19 affected your job experience? I guess through the whole span of it up until now. I'll open that up to anybody who'd like to answer.
Well, yeah, I can start. I am a litigator, so I have to go to court, and this has been challenging for folks. I have done court proceedings sitting at the kitchen table with with my laptop, and I've done court proceedings live. I've gone into courtrooms for motions and that sort of thing. So that's been a very difficult thing for the courts to get up to speed with. The appeals court is doing everything online now. They're having basically Zoom proceedings, and so is the SJC. But the courts are gradually moving over towards having more and more courtroom hearings. And I don't know how jury trials are going to go forward, but that is going to happen gradually over the next couple of months. Jury trials will begin again. I have no idea how that's going to be workable, but they're attempting to do that. It's really been difficult for the administration of justice. It's been difficult for people who want to get their day in court. I'm aware of a few circumstances where people, especially pro se litigants, had difficulties getting their cause in front of a court, and that's caused a lot of frustration and I think a lot of backup as well. All evictions have been, there's been a freeze on evictions, and so there's probably a pending avalanche of evictions that are going to be happening in the next few months. And personally, as far as working is concerned, I work in the city and live in the suburbs, and I, for the most part, have just been driving in and going to my office. I work in a building in the financial district on the 10th floor. It's not a problem to take the elevator because usually there's only one person on the elevator, and everybody in my firm has an office where the door closes. So for me, it's easier to go in and sit at my desk at work. I can get more done that way. So I basically leave the house, get in the car, drive to work, and don't have to really interact with folks except for at my office. And that's basically the way it's been since the COVID pandemic began.
No, yeah. Thank you so much. I definitely agree with that also. I think on a school related aspect, I think a lot of our students can agree also that it's kind of been routine that you wake up, you open your laptop, you're on Zoom, and then you close your laptop, you go to sleep, and you wake up and you do the same thing every day. So it is definitely something to get accustomed to. I think McKenna and a lot of our students can also agree with the fact that our workload has also just been quadrupled with this whole new Zoom normalcy as well. So I can definitely can agree with that also. I guess because being a student is my job, but it's definitely different, but I understand completely. Anybody else open for that question? How has COVID-19 affected your job experience personally in the type of career field that you're in? Even if you are, I know we have some law students as well. How has that also affected your life? Applying to law school, getting into law school, or being in law school, how has that affected your life as well?
So I can talk to how it's affected my job, and because I work at a hospital. So COVID-19, when it hit us, and in Boston Medical Center where I work, and for those that don't know, we're the region's largest safety net hospital. So we got hit very hard because of a lot of social disparities when it comes to COVID-19 too, and we got hit very hard with our patients, where we and Mass General were the two that had the largest percentage of COVID patients. So there were days that we were working basically, even in our department, the law department, probably about 20 hours a day, because we had just so many legal issues happening, where we had licensure issues. We were leasing buildings from the state so that we could put sick homeless patients in there and treat them in these buildings. And we had issues regarding research issues, because nobody had a COVID test initially, yet when it became available, it would still take like days or weeks even to be able to send out test results. So we wanted to be able to do them ourselves. So we had to get emergency use authorization using a unproven test to determine COVID positivity. So we had to figure out how to do that. We had employment issues, because some doctors didn't want to come to work anymore because they were afraid of COVID. And I'm not picking on the doctors there. There are other employees too throughout the hospital, but that's just that those caused the most drama. And we had just so many legal issues popping up, and it was exciting. It was an adrenaline rush, and it was exhausting all the time too. But it was also really good because we were able to really make a difference. And in our office, we really work very well with the medical staff and with the rest of the administrative staff, where they don't view the in-house lawyers as being the enemy, which often can happen. They view us very much as being their partners and trying to help them solve stuff. So they would come to us with ideas of how they could help treat patients in this environment. Like, we had patients that didn't want to come to the hospital anymore. Pregnant women, for instance, who didn't want to come to the hospital for their prenatal visits because they were afraid of COVID. So we got special permission from the state to be able to get an ambulance and to drive out to their neighborhoods and to be able to do prenatal visits in their neighborhoods and be able to do well child visits out there and give kids vaccines and things like that. So we were coming up with some really innovative ideas. So it was really exciting for us as the lawyers to be able to play a role in that. It's definitely been different, and now we're kind of getting back into a more routine new normal, as it would be.
Oh, definitely. Thank you.
That I appreciate what you were saying right there at the end, Richard, because earlier today I was on a conference call with some of my colleagues because we're trying to navigate. Connecticut is opening up some of its courts to start jury trials in November, which is going to be fun and interesting to figure out how that's going to work. But we were reminiscing for a moment about all the things that attorneys couldn't do with technology a year ago that they were now able to do with the court system. And I was in the unique position where I just transitioned from working at the appellate court to now working in private practice. So I've now had a chance to see both sides of the coin in the world of COVID. And, when I was at the court and when I was, now in private practice, the conversation is, well, what is the future of, access to justice going to look like and access to the courts? And, it took a global pandemic to force the judiciary, the judicial system, to say, we can do things online. We can have trials online. We can have oral argument and other things that now may all of a sudden open up doors to people to be able to come into the courthouse that couldn't before, or it might make access to justice a little bit easier and quicker for some, once we get past the backlog that has amassed from the last 8 months. So I think, if nothing else, it's hurt us in a lot of ways, but it's also forced us to be extremely creative in a way that I think will have lasting effects on our practices moving forward. And it's scary and it's sad with all that's happened in the last 8 months, but I think we have that unique opportunity to be kind of excited looking to the future and like what we can do with these tools now that before people weren't really down to use, but now they have to. So now we can do more.
Definitely. Thank you. Thank you so much. And before we get into our next question, we do have a question from the chat that I will ask you guys out. This is for all the panelists. The participant is asking if it would be possible if you guys could explain what area of law all of you practice, whether that's different, and even if it was different from once you actually graduated to now, if you could just explain that for all the participants.
Sure, I'll go ahead. When I first started out, I worked for an insurance company in the law department, and I did that for 5 years. I was doing litigation management, and so I managed cases that had been brought against the insurance company all over the country. And then I went into private practice as a litigator, and I started not trying cases right away by any stretch of the imagination, but I started learning about litigation. And after a few years, I started litigating or trying cases. And it was pretty much a general commercial practice. But I started developing a lot of construction case law clients or construction clients. And then in my last 13 years, I've been, as I mentioned at the outset, I've been defending architects and engineers, design professionals in construction litigation matters with respect to design defect cases that have been brought against them. So we have a national practice, so I do claims management, similar to what I did at the beginning of my career. I do it nationally, so I have cases all over the country and to some extent all over the world, which is really interesting. Every single one is very different, but it all pertains to whether or not the architect or engineer has performed its services within the applicable standard of care. In other words, whether its design is defective or not, and whether or not any such defect caused the damages. So that's basically what I do.
Awesome, thank you. And anybody can jump on next. I'll pass it off to Tom.
I feel like in speaking to the students on this chat, I assume that all of you are undergraduates. And you guys are way ahead of where I was when I was at the same stage you are, way ahead. I did not want to be an attorney. My father was a lawyer, and in my adolescent rebellion, I said, there's no way I'm going to do that. And in fact, I should have been in the class of 1984. I'm not really the class of 1990. That's when I got my degree. I did 8 semesters and didn't finish. I had to write a paper, a history thesis, and I didn't do it because I wanted to go work in radio. And no one in radio cares whether you have a college degree or not. So I did that. And then I did that for a few years and then moved on to the financial services industry. And I worked for a mutual fund company as a systems analyst. Did that for a couple of years and then ran into a friend of mine from living in Pierpont in Southwest. And I hadn't seen her in a few years. I said, Linda, how's it going? What are you doing these days? And she said, I'm a prosecutor now. And then just a bell went off and I decided that I wanted to be a prosecutor. But that meant that I had to finish my college degree and then go to law school, which I did. And I went to Northeastern and I co-opted. So I got 4 different co-op jobs, a clerkship with a federal judge, a co-op job clerkship with a federal judge. I worked at a big firm in Miami and a big firm here in Boston. And I worked at the U.S. Attorney's Office here in Boston. When I graduated, the economy was terrible. It was a really bad recession and jobs were hard to come by. A lot of people in my cohort had real difficulty getting work. I applied for criminal defense jobs and prosecutorial jobs. Ended up getting hired in the Suffolk County DA's office here in Boston and worked there for 6 years. It was the best job I've ever had in my life. I loved it. I concentrated mainly on domestic violence cases. And really felt like I had a good reason to get up and go to work every day because I was, my work was very important. I felt like it was important to the neighborhoods, it was important to the families that I worked with. And so I really got a lot out of it. Moved on in 1999 because I had 3 kids and had to pay the mortgage. And went into private practice. Did medical malpractice for a while, and then I've been in private, working in a small firm, medium-sized firm venue ever since. So I have a pretty broad base of experience. Last year, I tried a case in the business litigation session in Suffolk Superior Court. It was a pretty big case, got a $1 million verdict. And last week, I was in East Boston District Court representing an iron worker who was accused of getting into a street brawl with one of his brother's neighbors. So I handle a wide variety of things. I mean, the criminal defense that I do is pretty sporadic, and it's usually provided as a service to clients of our firm. And in this case, the client is married to a person who has a big company that's one of our firm's clients. But that being said, I do a lot of different kinds of work. I like being in court. I like trying cases. I like the theater of it. I can say that being a lawyer is one of those jobs that, for the most part, the longer you do it, the better you are at it. And I have a perspective and a base of experience that I feel really makes me a much better lawyer now than I was 20 years ago. You're continually learning and continually growing. And while you have to work very hard if you want to be a lawyer, I'm glad I did it. And it's been very enriching for me and given me a lot of opportunities to meet people and do things that I never otherwise would have had the chance to.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tom. Awesome. Before we get in to anybody else, I just want to make sure that, McKenna, you do have a question, right?
I do, but let's wrap this one
okay,
up.
Well, okay, great. I guess I'll ask next, Ashley, can you explain which law that you are practicing now? You might be muted. Thank you.
There we go. All right. So I do insurance defense, similar to some of the other people, the other panelists. So what that is civil litigation. I work defending clients who are insureds of insurers. So I get a lot of car accidents, a lot of trucking cases, slip and fall, stuff like that. I am licensed to practice in Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and Vermont. So that's been kind of interesting, just kind of going back to the COVID question, seeing how 3 different states have handled it differently, better than others, not as good as others. And I've been with my firm for about a year and a half now. When I first graduated from law school, though, I was working at a real estate firm doing closings. So my background is more real estate. But that being said, just to kind of echo what Tom has said and kind of what Zach was saying earlier, Gwen even, I like the litigation. I like the theater of it, the show of it. I tried my first jury trial last year and it was very exciting and we got a complete defense verdict. So that was, a 1-for-1. So that's great. But it's, it is hard work. And I think as a young lawyer, there's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of time, there's a lot of debt that goes into it, but I think it has been very rewarding so far.
Awesome. Thank you. That's actually awesome. I love to hear when people have a career post-grad and they also love the career that they're doing as well, honestly. Thank you for that. Megan, do you want to explain what you're actually studying in law school now?
Yeah, so I am in my 2nd year of law school, like I had mentioned. I also work right now part-time and then full-time in the summers for KPMG, which is one of the big 4 accounting firms. And I work for business tax services, so working with companies and clients who need help with filling out the tax forms, making sure they're filling out the ones that they need to, in hopes of not getting audited, or if they are being audited, that they're filling everything out that they need to. Unlike your undergrad, there's not really majors in law school, it's just getting a law degree. But a lot of schools have concentrations or pathways that you can look into, which I highly suggest if you're interested in like a specific type of law. So right now I'm on the tax law pathway.
Thank you. Sarah?
And I actually got a private message asking to explain how I kind of decided to go into law, considering I had other majors that were not law. So I guess just kind of a brief overview. in middle school and high school, I did mock trial, which is kind of where the interest first began. Like Ashley and Tom were saying, I really, really loved being in the courtroom. I loved the theater of it. I've always loved public speaking and presenting, and just kind of like putting in the work and getting to present your case. And so going into UMass, I kind of knew that that was kind of like an interest in the back of my head, but I wasn't entirely sure. So I was public health, legal studies, and French. Public health, I began and I was kind of on like the health policy track, thinking that I could bring law into that. It was probably about sophomore, junior year that I started to think about doing health law, and just kind of combining those two interests. And the more that I looked into law school, I did a lot of informational interviews. A good amount of the people on this panel actually were really awesome at helping guide me and give me some advice along the way. And I decided eventually to go to law school, I guess as a little bit of a basis, because I don't think this was really obvious to me before law school. There's two broad tracks that you can go into, and that's litigation and transactional. Litigation is typically being in a courtroom, dealing with lawsuits, things like that. Transactional is more like contracts and dealing with like the business side of law. Because of my love for like presenting and public speaking, I knew that I wanted to do litigation, and so that's where I'm geared right now. I originally was still really focused on health law, and BU actually has a really great concentration in health law. But the more that I learned about it, the more it became clear that health law is typically like regulatory, and so more contracts based, more transactional, more like hospital mergers, things like that. And health litigation is less common. And so I definitely still have an interest in health litigation broadly, but for right now I'm focusing more on litigation. I'm in a clinic right now where I'm working with clients, and so trying to get that experience as a student. I interned with a judge this past summer, and so yeah, litigation broadly, trying to get experience in a bunch of different areas to just help me figure out where I might want to specialize down the road.
Awesome. Thank you. And then Cheryl?
Yeah, so I went from UMass to law school at Northeastern, and I did 4 co-ops, 2 at small firms where I helped do anything that was needed, from real estate to bankruptcy to litigation, whatever. And then I also worked at the Board of Bar Overseers, reviewing complaints for attorney discipline and helping to do some investigation and research for that. And then I worked at Greater Boston Legal Services as a student attorney and represented clients in the courts on family law matters and domestic violence cases. Then from there, when I graduated, I worked at one of the small firms where I had previously been working on and had to do a lot of collection work. It was business to business collection, but it still was pretty grinding, I guess. It wasn't the most exciting, but I could help on some of the other cases as well. And I also did legislative advocacy for the Mass chapter of the National Organization for Women as a part-time job for 4 years. So working on legislation and working on organizing community groups and things like that on various initiatives that we were trying to pass. And I eventually opened my own law practice, and I was in downtown Boston, and I did a lot of work on care and protections. So families where there have been allegations of abuse or neglect and the children are in foster care. and I would either represent the children or the parents. And I also did civil commitment hearings where people who were mentally ill and they sought to treat them with antipsychotic medications or to hospitalize them, I would defend them and try to, keep them out of the hospital or get a treatment plan they wanted. Today, I have kind of segued through the years, and I do family and probate, which means I represent people in divorce, guardianships for minor children or for incapacitated adults. I do estate disputes. I draft wills. What else? I probate estates after somebody passes away. So I file, their will and help get the paperwork in order and make the distributions to the beneficiaries. So I do a variety of things. So every day is a little bit different.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Cheryl. And then Richard.
So I started off actually doing energy law. I worked for the Washington, D.C. office of a national law firm, and I was in their energy practice group working primarily with nuclear power plants. And it was actually very interesting work, but when we moved up to the Boston area, we wanted to move back. We wanted to be closer to family. There aren't many law firms up here that are representing nuclear power plants before the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. So I had been doing a lot of litigation down in DC anyways for the nuclear power plant. So I ended up transitioning to commercial litigation, so representing clients in business disputes, breach of contracts, employment disputes, things like that. And I did that for a number of years, worked for several firms in the Boston area, did some environmental work as well. And I'm also in the Army Reserve, and I got mobilized back in 2011 and deployed to Iraq. And it just happened that I ended up being assigned to the brigade that commanded all of the medical units throughout Iraq. And I found that I really enjoyed being more of an advisor than a litigator. So I really enjoyed the advice, and I was dealing with contracts and employment matters, although we didn't call them that, but not as much the litigation. I really enjoyed the counsel part of it. So I was determined when I came back from Iraq to find a job working in-house somewhere doing that type of work, where it was also a broad-based practice where every day I'd be doing something different, almost like jack of all trades, master of none, which is definitely how I see myself these days, because a day doesn't go by where I'm not quite uncomfortable with the areas of law that I'm practicing in, because there's so many. And and I was able to parlay that experience working in a healthcare environment in Iraq to a hospital here in the Boston area. And I've been with DMC ever since then. And as I mentioned earlier, my practice really spans anything that keeps the hospital running. Really anything but malpractice. Malpractice goes to our insurance lawyers. Morrison Mahoney is one of our insurance defense firms, where Zach works. And it's, every day is different and interesting. And I enjoy my practice.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Richard. Thank you all for answering that question. We're now going to move on to our next question, which was actually going to be asked by McKenna. So she can go on ahead and cue on in.
Yes, Zach, we do know that you did not get to fully disclose your area of law, so we would love if you could take away the student questions that we have coming up. The first one's from Jack. If you want to unmute yourself, Jack, and ask your question.
Yeah. Hey guys, my name's Jack. Thanks for being on here. And so I was just wondering, kind of what qualities would you say make a good lawyer, or what kind of person should become a lawyer?
Oh, wow. I think at least at the moment in the current world that we find ourselves in, the word that I have been saying to myself out loud over and over again is flexibility, and that will help you in so many ways, whether it's being flexible with your client, flexible with opposing counsel, or flexible with the court as they try to figure out how to, well, do all of this and keep the courthouses open while also trying to protect people and save lives. And I think that, in a pre-COVID world, before I was a practicing attorney, I thought flexibility was a good thing anyway, because I just think being a flexible person is a better way to get along in life, and it generally helps you get along with other people. But I think, there have been so many barriers and challenges that have popped up over the last, 9 months, that if you're not flexible, then on top of the amount of challenges you're already facing because of the world, you're making your job 10 times harder. So I think that, if you're not going to be flexible, then you're really building a wall for yourself that you easily could overcome if you just were willing to say, okay, we need to get through this. I need to do this for my client. I need to do this for, what their desire is. And the only way that we're going to be able to do that is to be flexible with everybody working with us. Now, that doesn't mean let your guard down either, right? You obviously need to still be an advocate, but there's being an advocate, and then there's being an ass, and there are ways to not be an ass and be a better advocate. But it's easier for me to say because obviously, I've been practicing for 2 months as opposed to working in the court where I got to observe practicing attorneys kind of do that. And the attorneys that I saw people respect and want to work with were the ones that were flexible and willing to work with you, as opposed to the ones that were hard-lined, my way or the highway for the result kind of attorneys. And quite frankly, the court was much more responsive to the attorneys that were flexible and willing to work with them, as opposed to not. So I think, above all, that's one of the things that really kind of should take it away.
And if maybe we could go around, if everyone could just give a word and maybe just a short description why. We would love to hear everyone's input, but we don't have all day, so we want to get everybody's word in as well for Jack's question. So, in whichever order you can decide. So whoever is compelled to go right ahead.
Okay. There are a bunch of words that stand out, and I like Zach's, but I would say preparation is probably the most important thing. I have seen so many attorneys just fall apart, and whether it's at a deposition, whether it's at a hearing, whether it's a trial, or in an oral argument, before the appellate court. Unless you're incredibly prepared and you spend the time it takes to get to a point where you can respond to anything. And in a way, it goes with Zach's flexibility, because the more you're prepared and the more you know your information, your case, you know everything about it, you know what supports it, then you have the ability to be flexible. You can stand on your feet and argue a case, and you're confident on what you're doing because you're so well prepared. I used to go into court with one of those like legal size manila folders that opens up, and I would have my entire case in that folder. I would have the key holdings in the cases that were applicable to my matter. I would have key facts that I could refer to. I would have, even dissents in cases that I thought were supportive of my case. And I had memorized that thing so much that I wasn't reading from it. I could just, pull things out of it. I knew my documents inside and out. I knew what my opposing counsel's arguments were going to be. And if I wasn't quite sure what they were going to raise, I would raise it and I would, answer it. The best thing you can be as an attorney is incredibly prepared.
I would add to that. I think preparation and detail oriented, attention to detail. I know no area of the law where the best lawyers are not the most detail oriented people. A day doesn't go by where I don't get frustrated with myself because I read a case too quickly, or I read a statute too quickly, or I read an email too quickly. I'm not focusing on every single word there. And the best lawyers I know are just, just so detail oriented. It amazes me. Some of the best lawyers I know, like they don't even know what a typo is, because they go back and they read every single letter and make sure that there's no typo in it. Meanwhile, I find myself sending emails out all the time, and realizing, oh shoot, I can't believe I did that, and kicking myself afterwards. For all I know, those detail-oriented lawyers are doing the same thing. I just don't notice it. But they read things so carefully, and I admire that, and that's something that I think sets someone up for success as a lawyer. Doesn't mean that you can't be a lawyer and not be that detail-oriented, but I think it's a skill that is very well appreciated in this profession.
I would agree with everything that everybody else has said, and going with that, maybe it's another way to describe some of the same qualities that Gwen and Richard have mentioned, are tenacity and competitiveness. Whether you're going to be a transactional attorney or a litigator, you have to feel a sense of pride and the willingness to succeed, and a real sense of personal investment. Because you might not be personally deeply interested in the arcane issues of whatever the case might be presenting to you, whatever the client's problem might be. Might not be something you've ever thought about before or have an intrinsic interest in or feel is intrinsically interesting. But you have to have that desire to do a good job and to represent your client correctly and properly and get the best possible result for your client. And that takes sometimes tenacity. All of us have stories of going into a conference room and wading through 53 boxes of documents and reading all of it and sorting through it and trying to figure out what that meant for our client. And if you have that, and that to an extent, I think comes down to competitiveness, which is that you're going to show up at the deal when it's time to hash out the contract, or you're going to go to court and argue your case, and you're going to do a good job. And you're going to be able to look at yourself in the mirror the next day and say, I might not have won, but I did a good job. So that's, I guess it reverts back to something I said at the beginning, that being a lawyer is hard work. And to be good at it, you got to be a worker. It's not all about brains and having a good suit.
I'll also just add on, I was originally going to say organization, but I think that goes hand in hand with a lot of what's already been said. I think a really important quality is humility. Whether it's in law school or in practice. In law school, no one is a big fan of the person in class who thinks that they get every single question right. Everyone's there to learn. No one's a pro yet. And so just among your classmates and your colleagues, I think that will take you a long way in practice when it comes to networking and, working with other people in the field. Through my clinic, I have already worked with truly evil attorneys who are just really mean, and it doesn't look good for them. It makes no one want to work with them. It makes their client look bad, even if their client isn't the bad person. And in the 2 years that I worked before going to law school, one thing that my boss always said was, if you make a mistake, just own it. Even if it's not your mistake, if it's on your end, just say, yes, sorry, let's move on, let's get the job done. And I think especially in this field, that's really important and worth a lot.
I think I know I already spoke, but I want to add to what Sarah just said, because I thought what she just said was incredibly insightful, especially for 2L. Not that I should be surprised at that, but people view the legal profession as one of being combative, right? You're arguing all the time, which, by the way, not all lawyers do, but we're advocating for our clients. We're doing it zealously, and that causes a fair amount of stress between people. But the best lawyers are the ones who are professional and civil with the other lawyers all the time. And it doesn't matter. You can represent your client, as much as they deserve, and to be as aggressive a advocate for them, but at the same time, you can be friends with the lawyers on the other side. And I remember when I was just starting practice, I was working in DC, and I was, oh, I'm sorry, I had just moved to Boston, and I was in California for some depositions. And the other lawyers who represent the other parties, we were fighting it out all day over some details in the deposition about what the witness could testify or not testify for. And I mean, just wanted to kill these people all day long. And then I got back to my hotel room, and this is right at the time when people were starting to use cell phones, but not always. And there was a voicemail message on the hotel phone from me, from those lawyers inviting me to go out to dinner with them. You know, and it just, I always look back at that, and because they were good, decent people, and I like to think I'm a good, decent person, and, you know, we could just put aside all of the zealous advocacy that we had that day for our clients, and just, you know, be good people, you know, and that really, be civil with each other. And that really, that's not always present, but the best lawyers, I think, are the ones who maintain their civility with their opponents.
Just to add to that real quickly, just a short war story. I had a case that was going on for 5 years, and it was in the Connecticut Superior Court. And every time we got a court date, they couldn't get us a judge. So we got postponed. I'd say the trial was continued maybe 4 times. We finally got a court date, and the two of us looked at each other, and it's the same attorney on the other side. Two of us looked at each other and just said, whatever they give us, whoever they give us, we're going to say yes to. We don't care. And we started our trial, and it's like, I don't know, 6 or 7 day trial. And at the end of the trial, the judge said to us, he had never presided over a more civil trial before. You know, just like Richard was just saying, it's, you know, you don't have to be nasty and vituperative and obnoxious to, you know, to zealously protect or zealously advocate for your client. You have to do that, but you can be a decent human being at the same time. I've had one attorney slam the Hartford Superior Court big bronze doors in my face because he was a jerk. But you don't have to be like that to be an attorney. You just don't.
All right. I am going to cue in Naya's question now. Naya, do you want to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yeah, sure. So my question was well, for me, being a legal studies major, I don't really want to be a lawyer necessarily. I want to go more into law enforcement. So my question is, do you think having the legal studies background is still helpful or useful?
I guess I would answer that, that of course it's useful because everything you do is an experience, and you don't know where you're going to end up in 10, 20 years, but you're learning critical thinking skills, you're learning something about the law, and I think that you're also getting a fairly well-rounded education, because in law enforcement, you're going to deal with all kinds of people in all kinds of situations. So every course that you take and everything that you do in life, I often find relates, you know, often something that you've done that's not related to law or that's not really related to my area of practice will come into play with certain clients, you know, whether it's, you know, some creative solution or understanding who they are or, you know, what their issue is. I just feel that having a well-rounded education and understanding, you know, different areas is always helpful. And I certainly having a legal studies background would help in law enforcement just for the critical thinking skills and understanding, you know, laws and how they are enforced is obviously helpful.
Thank you.
I'd agree with that, Naya. And good police officers are open to new information, and they're curious, and they work hard. And you going to UMass and going that extra mile to get that 4-year bachelor's degree and studying the law while you're there marks you out as somebody who's going to be a worker and is going to be intellectually curious and is going to take the job seriously in the right way. So, yeah, you shouldn't have any misgivings about the major that you're in. and going into law enforcement. And just like Cheryl said, 10 years from now, you can decide you want to go to law school. So lots of cops are lawyers.
Thank you, Tom and Cheryl, for your insight on that one. Naya, did that answer your question?
Yeah, it did. It was really helpful. Thank you, guys.
All right. Any other attendees have any? We have time for maybe one more question if anyone has anything pressing. If not, we can go on to our last little advice question. Feel free to unmute yourself, attendees, if you have a question.
I did receive a question in the chat as well for anybody also. And I guess it was, what kind of opportunities are available to recent grads? Being with our kind of normalcy or the world that we're living in now with COVID-19, what experiences, like I said, what kind of opportunities, are available to recent grads and even students that are undergrads right now? And what do you think would be the best opportunity for these students to kind of get their foot in the door with law?
I can jump in really quick. I would just say that obviously this is different for every firm and stuff, but in general, the legal field is still hiring right now. A lot of firms haven't laid people off. Again, some maybe have, but in general, the legal field hasn't taken too big of a hit. And so when I graduated, I was looking for jobs in any sort of law. I was looking for legal assistant, legal secretary, law clerk, law office assistant, like any of those keywords. And I would just say to not be too picky about the area that you want to be in. I worked in real estate law for 2 years, and that definitely is not my target goal, but it still was really helpful to get a basic understanding of the legal system, some of the lingo in the legal world, how a law office runs. And so I would just say to be really open with your options in terms of, what kind of work you do, because in the end, if you are looking to go to law school, any experience before law school is going to be better than none. And I do recommend, obviously it's not necessary, but I definitely do recommend trying to get a little bit of experience before going to law school. I think it kind of can give you a little bit of a leg up, but that's not to say that you have to or that you're disadvantaged if that's not your option, but it worked really well for me. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, I would just agree with Sarah on that. I also took 2 years off in between graduating from UMass and then going to Suffolk. And I worked as a paralegal for those 2 years at a firm in downtown Boston. And I think it just made some of these kind of weird esoteric concepts that you learn in law school much easier to grasp because you see it in the real world. And I think also now as an attorney, it gives you great perspective on, like Sarah just said, how to treat people in an office. Because you can't, there's no class in undergrad or law school for that. And your assistant is hopefully your best friend, and it's all about treating them with the same respect that you would treat the senior partner in your firm. And I would also just say, don't be afraid to take an opportunity that maybe doesn't sound right up your alley, because you just really never know who you'll meet and what the opportunity could turn into, even if it's not on paper something that you think is interesting.
Yeah, I would add a couple of other things. One is, it might not be a law career per se, but working in an insurance company gives you a good perspective, teaches you a lot about what's happening in the law. Any kind of financial investment place. And the courts do have some clerk positions that may not be the best paid positions, but they will connect you to a lot of different people, and they do have a state website where you can look those up. And I would encourage you, to do that. The State House often has, elected officials often have job openings for staff. and various committees have staff. So those are places, you know, that you could and should still look. And I think I would echo what I think Ashley was saying, which is every job is a stepping stone to something else, and you learn from every job. I think my first job was, you know, waitressing at Friendly's, which, you know, you learn how to understand other people and you learn how to be nice to people, even when they're not nice to you. So I think that is a skill that I developed through that job in high school that I wouldn't have had, you know, if I didn't take that job. But every single job that you take, you know, it's not going to be your last job. Like nobody stays in the same job forever anymore. So just look at it as an opportunity and sort of be creative and open-minded on the jobs that you're looking at.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And now that actually brings our event to about 8 o'clock now. So that is going to be the whole duration of our event. However, we don't want to leave you guys off without a little bit of a connection to UMass. So we are going to ask you one last question. And if we can just keep it to about a couple of words or a sentence, just very brief. And I guess my final question, just so we can wrap up, what is some last advice you would give to current UMass students looking for a job in your career, or just looking for a job within the law experience altogether? I will go ahead and ask that question first to Megan, and then she can pass it off to anybody else.
Yeah, I think I'm just gonna kind of reiterate what everyone else has already said, that be open to everything, because even if it's not exactly your dream job, especially right out of your undergrad, and you're looking for a job and you're not sure if you want to take it or not, even if it's not your dream end all be all job, you never know who you're going to meet. You never know who's going to be able to connect you to something else, even if you just stay there for a year. Getting it on the resume, especially, and as hard as it is to say, especially during COVID, where companies are laying off and where it is a difficult time to find a job. My sister graduated this past spring, so I've seen firsthand how difficult it is to be able to find a job. So just don't get too discouraged. Keep applying, even if it's not exactly what your dream is. You'll get there at one point.
Thank you so much. Anybody else would like to give some just last minute advice to our current UMass students?
Yeah, whatever job you do it well. People want to make sure that people have a good work ethic, you have a good attitude, and you work hard. So whatever you do, and it doesn't matter what you do, you can be digging ditches in the street. It doesn't make a difference. Do your job well, and people will notice you.
I would add to that, be the person that you want to work with.
Yep.
So whether, and even if you're a sole practitioner, you know, you're still going to be working with people in your own office or colleagues on the other side of the table. So, you know, just be the person that other people want to work with. And that itself is going to pay dividends as well, because people are going to either send you business, offer you jobs, network with you, give you advice. And with that, you know, I just say best of luck to everybody, and go UMass.
I was going to say, stay in touch with UMass, whether it's volunteering, there's volunteer opportunities, the Alumni Association, or I don't know if Lindsay can give more details, but the Connect UMass platform. Stay in touch, because there's a lot of jobs through networking. There's a lot of opportunities there. And so stay in touch with UMass.
Yeah, piggybacking off of Cheryl, every job that I have got since I graduated from UMass, I've known a UMass graduate at that job. So I think that building the relationships and fostering the relationships that you make from UMass is very important to your ultimate success.
I totally agree. My first job was through UMass. My boss was a UMass alum, and my internship this summer was a UMass alum, and I think that's one of like the main reasons why I was even chosen to be interviewed. So use your UMass connections, even if that is going online and searching firms and going through the people and seeing who is UMass and like cold emailing them. I did that a lot. UMass people are always willing to talk to UMass students, so don't underestimate the power of that.
And that one piece of advice I pass on that I've carried with me for the last year. So former Chief Justice Gantz, he spoke at my swearing in last year. And, you know, when we were talking about jobs in the market, he always said, at the end of the day, find some meaning in whatever it is. Like, you're not going to like every job, but if you can find some meaning in it that is personal to you, then you've already won more in the day than you thought you would. And then if you can't do that, at least try to find something that needs help. And at that point in time, he pointed directly to working with children in Massachusetts and finding homes and things like that, because there are certain laws. And I mean, far be it for me to understand family law. I leave that to my family law colleagues, but there were a lot of issues going on there with child placement and things like that, and that they didn't have enough attorneys or enough staff to help navigate that crisis. So there were backlogs. Well, in today's world, we have backlogs, as we've talked about today, with you know, the moratorium on evictions and things like that ending. So there's a lot of areas in the world that need help and need work, and people to care about that work and to want to do something with it. And, you know, if nothing else, they want you. How much they're willing to pay you is a different story, but they want you, they need you, and having meaning and dedication is really important to them, and hopefully to you.
Awesome. I think that was it from all the panelists. So just to link back, thank you so much, Cheryl, for actually segueing us into this and our closing thoughts. So thank you all again for joining us today. We really do appreciate it. Obviously, under all these circumstances, that you guys were still able to come out panelists and participant-wise, just to hear what everybody has to say and get more insights on the job and career inside of law and law school. But to jump back on the Connect UMass, I actually put the link in the chat, and it's actually an amazing resource for us as UMass undergraduate students to connect with alumni. And you can actually connect as an undergrad and a grad student, whatever really is your identity with UMass. This platform is used, again, to help you guys connect yourself with alumni, amazing alumni like we have on this call right now. And it just, again, keeps this conversation going, because we don't want it to end. As we always say, you were, you are UMass. So we always want to make sure that we're always connected, at least on this platform, because we couldn't have it any other way. So as we are closing out this session, we do want to remind you guys to follow us on Instagram, UMass SAA. We'll have a lot more updates and more events such as this one. So we do have a couple more events in the next couple of weeks. Next week is actually going to be our nonprofit and organization. Then we have strategic information in strategy and informatics, as well as a healthcare night and a sports, entertainment, and media as well. So come out to those, show some support to our UMass alumni, and get more insight on kind of what the world is like post UMass, because I think we kind of fall in this little dream of UMass is going to be here forever, which it always is, but you guys know what I'm talking about. But again, thank you guys all again, and you guys are free to go.